All right, everybody, welcome into another live edition of Coffee and Celtics. On today's episode, we are going to discuss what went down in LA over the last 2 days, a split for the Celtics between the Clippers and the Lakers. And then on the second half of the show, we're actually going to be joined by a guest. We're going to have Kirk Henderson, who is one of the co-hosts of Pod Maverick, part of our Blue Wire family here, and we are going to preview for you the NBA Finals rematch coming up on Saturday, which once again, myself and Greg, we're going to be in the building for with the crew. So if for some reason you're in Dallas this weekend, hit us up, slide in the DMs, let us know. Would love to see you. But right now, it's a live edition of Coffee and Celtics. You guys know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy, a live Friday Coffee and Celtics edition, which, of course, as you know, proudly brought to you by Wood Island Media. Wood Island Media, a powerhouse production company for the past decade, specializing in celebrity, branded, and social content, based in Los Angeles, but roots in Boston. As always, it's your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. Greg, on this Friday morning, I'm trying to keep myself as upbeat and positive as possible. So I'm curious, which one of our podcasts over the last 2 weeks are we just basically going to copy and paste that conversation today?
Dude, I was just about to say, I'm the positive one. The sky is not falling. You're getting hit by falling clouds and acid rain at times. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of par for the course with an 82-game season. But I wanted to ask you, did you
Yeah.
have a chance to listen to Bill Simmons' monologue on the Celtics this morning?
This morning, no. The last thing I listened to with Simmons was the him and KOC like trade fiesta that they did.
So just to recap, so Simmons went to the last 2 games in LA. Obviously, he lives out in LA. And his big takeaway was that there's something wrong with the team. It's not just an on-off switch thing. He thinks that there's something fundamentally wrong with the team. Seeing them in person, he was just like basically a body language doctor, was appalled at the way that they played. So, you know, the big culprit seemingly, and he hasn't played well. I'm a big Jaylen guy, but he was just like Jaylen Brown just looks different this year. Like he's saying, is he too strong? Did he like make himself too stiff? What's up with his shot? I've always been concerned about Jaylen's shot. And it does seem like he's finding it to some degree from 3. It's like starting to rip the nets a little bit more on some
looked a little bit better. That was one of the few bright spots against the Lakers, is that he hit a couple threes that looked like, hey, there's the all-star Jaylen Brown that we're used to.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, let's just start there with the all-star. Like, do you think Jaylen deserves to be an all-star this year, the way he's playing?
I've been brewing on this take for a little bit here that I'm not sure we're getting 2 all-stars. We were a couple weeks ago, we should probably get 3 all-stars, right? Like that was the conversation. So the only reason I haven't brought it up as a topic is when you look around the East with some of the injuries, it would be pretty insane for Jaylen not to make the all-star team. And that's really kind of the saving grace of this, because I don't really think he's played for a pretty significant stretch to an all-star level. But when you look around and the way that they have it set up so the all-star starters were announced last night. Jason Tatum back as an all-star starter. Also, number 3 selling jersey. So for all people that say Jason Tatum is not a face of American basketball, he gets a lot of votes, sells a lot of jerseys, starts a lot of all-star games, gets a lot of first-team All-NBA. Just saying. But for the all-star setup, it's going to be on the bench once they do the reserves, which is either next week or 2 weeks from now. I forget when it is. It'll be 3 more front court guys, so any forward or center, and then there's 2 wild card spots. So the guard position in the East is loaded, and it's just like overcrowded. That's probably where a lot of the wild cards are going to fall, just because there's so many guys that have cases to make the all-star team. But out of essentially 5 opportunities for Jaylen to make the all-star team as a reserve, it's really hard to find other front court guys, with Paolo having missed so much time, with Franz being out, with Embiid and the Embiidness of it all. Like you're really looking at it's Jaylen, Evan Mobley, Pascal Siakam,
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Johnson. Like, I mean, and Jalen Johnson's having a great year, but you're going to take Jalen Johnson on the All-Star team over Jalen. Right, exactly. So you run out of names pretty quickly. And Jimmy Butler's not been, Jimmy's obviously in the middle of his own stuff going on. Bam's not having a good year. So it's, you're kind of running out of names. So I think he's going to make it, but I don't even think he's the second best player on the Celtics right now. That's Kristaps Porzingis. Like that's kind of what I've, not saying that's permanent. That's not in ink. But over the last, I don't know, let's call it since KP came back from his like second injury that he missed time, I think KP, when he's on the court, has at least been the more consistent guy. Maybe he's not the better guy, but he's certainly been the more consistent player for the Celtics.
Yeah, it's been a tough stretch for Jalen. It's also been a really tough stretch for Derek White. Richard White claimed that Derek's not injured. I don't know about that, man. The way that he's moving up and down the court, he does not look good. Derek ended up playing 19 minutes last night?
I got it right here.
Kirk or Drew, one of them only played like 19 minutes last night.
So Drew played 25, and then Derek played just under 20.
Yeah. So and shout out to Ben Vallis from First to the Floor, legend right there. He says Jalen might be too jacked. Yeah. And I mean, he might be, man. He does look like a superhero, as Simmons said. But I think, watching Derek White run up and down the court, our buddy Mark texted us and he said he looks like he's running on glass or walking on glass. And there are definitely times where he looks beat up. Like the way that Derek White is moving doesn't look great. He'll have moments like the chase down block, staying attached to Reeves' hip off the pick and roll yesterday. Like that's a really nice play by Derek White. A couple nights ago, the steals that he had in transition, sprinting back, knocking the ball away, a couple great plays. Like there are moments where Derek White still looks like Derek White, but he's shot like shit for the past 2 months. Since we claimed that Derek White deserved to be an all-star over Jordan Poole, that is completely flipped. Simmons and KOC were extolled Jordan Poole on their last podcast.
Yeah.
And Derek White falling off a cliff. I hope he turns it around. I think he will turn it around, but he doesn't look good. So I wanted to start with a little game, Will, here.
Oh, let's do it.
I'm just going to give you a name, and you tell me your level of concern regarding their play this year or the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the way that they're playing.
Okay.
All right. Let's start with Drew.
Drew, level of concern. I'm at about a 6 or a 7 with Drew. And part of that is the age. So it's a little. So here's the thing, right? And we mentioned this. We've mentioned this a couple episodes now. Drew Holiday playing in the Olympics, Team USA all the way. Well, USA is a little bit, whatever. That's a different topic. But go bring home the gold. That was awesome. Good to see our guys on that team. It feels like it's catching up, right? Like it feels like he needs a break. And I can't lie to you, Greg. I was getting ready for this podcast today. And I was, looking through some different notes and just like, we're just going to repeat and copy. Like, hey, it's okay. Middle of the season. What are we going to do? And my mind wandered a little bit. I took a little trip in the trade machine. I was looking around at some Drew Holiday trades. Just, I don't think it's going to happen, to be clear. Nor do I really think they should do that. But at least on a 1-to-1 basis, it was pretty hard to find any trades that make sense. But to your point about being concerned, if I wasn't concerned, I wouldn't have even thought to look. Right. And I spent, I meant to spend a minute, 2 minutes. I spent probably 10, 15 minutes looking around just to make sure there wasn't a move out there that made sense. And
anything really interesting you came up with?
Only one I found that, and I'll be honest, this has been, I was reading this morning, Keith Smith had a tweet where he was like, basically the NBA is held hostage right now by the Jimmy Butler situation because that trade is going to need to be like a 4 or 5 team trade. And he said he's already talked to a couple GMs where they're like, we have another trade lined up, but that other team might be involved in this 4 to 5 team trade. So they can't make a move until they figure out if they're involved. And so I didn't go down the rabbit hole, which I think is going to be a much more common part of the NBA landscape of 3-team, 4-team trades, which used to be like, okay, guys, we're getting crazy here. Let's just calm down and keep this trade more simple. I think that's actually going to become the reality. So I just in my mini exploration, I was really just doing 1-to-1 trades as far as like, teams go. Didn't find anything except for one. Okay. And you're going to hate it. You're going to want to punch me in the face when I tell you what this is.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
And to be clear, I would also not do this. This is just one of the few trades that I found that
Okay.
work.
All right.
Drew Holiday for Tobias Harris.
What?
Like I said, I'm not saying I would do it. I was looking to find teams that it makes sense for, given Drew's age and given that they would want to be competitive. So like the Wizards don't make any sense. The Raptors make no sense, even if they have
Okay.
guys that make sense. The Pistons are creeping up and they don't have Jaden Ivey. They want to get into the playoffs, make some noise, and like have a competitive team. And so I was trying to find, like, you've talked about, you feel like we're too small. So I was looking for, where is there a wing that I can find and maybe make this trade? And like I even tried to go to the Warriors, maybe a Wiggins for Holiday trade, but they're already small and that's not going to make any sense. And the Caps just don't allow for that to work. The Pistons are one of the few teams that have cap space still available, so they're going to be involved in a bunch of trades because they can just take more salary in. And so financially, there's an argument to that trade, only that Drew has 3 more years. Tobias is this year and next year at about $5-6 million less. He's bigger. That's literally the only. I would never do it, but that was the only one that I could find, as I was trying to find teams that made sense and maybe had a salary or a player or two that could line up. It's the only one I found on a 1-to-1 basis that worked. I didn't explore 3-team or more trades though.
Okay. Yeah, I hate you right now.
Your facial reaction. I knew it was coming. I was actually kind of excited when I found it because I knew that I could bring it up on the show.
It's like, we're going to Dallas for your bachelor party this weekend. I don't even know if I want to go anymore.
Did I already ruin it for you?
You may have ruined it with a suggestion. The mere suggestion Tobias Harris on the Celtics.
Listen, I said I wouldn't do it. I was just, as a thought experiment, trying to find what trades could theoretically work or make sense. But this is back to your original question. I'm concerned. Like, Drew has not been very good all season, and if he's not going to be a knockdown 3-point shooter, we haven't, you mentioned with Derek White, even in the struggles, you can find the chase down block on Austin Reeves. You can find some of the defensive stuff from Derek White, even though he's not shooting the ball. Drew, he certainly hasn't been bad on defense, but there's not been really a bunch of moments I can think to where I'm like, dude, good luck when he decides to just fully lock in and gives that for you for an entire game. Can you think of a lot of moments or a lot of matchups where you're like, this is what I'm saving in the back of my mind that gives me no worry about Drew? Can you think about any of those moments right now?
No, I mean, the moments that stand out to you are the moments where he got picked on against OKC.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's the opposite. Yeah.
It is the opposite. Reggie Miller, I don't know if he put any thought into this at all, but did you see his wish list?
Yeah, I saw it was 2 people.
Jeremy Grant and CJ McCollum were the 2 names he threw out there. How would that even work?
Can we get an advisor on this? Can we just get somebody to advise? Like, it's just it's insulting to the, and listen, this is not why the ratings or whatever. I don't give a shit about the ratings, but you know how I've heard a lot of like when with football analysts, they treat their fans like, hey, you want to learn about the X's and O's and these real deep schematics and all of the deep intricacies of the interview process for these head coaches and all this. Meanwhile, the NBA is like, yeah, you guys should get CJ McCollum and Jeremy Grant for $35 million a year. Dude, we are the most taxed team in the history of basketball. What the fuck are you talking about?
Alex,
there's not a way to make this work.
Can you go to Spot Track on the trade machine and see if you can figure out a way that either CJ McCollum or Jeremy Grant could end up on the Celtics and just shoot it into the chat for us? Shout out to Alex producing the pod. You're the man. Yeah, man. I mean, that's definitely interesting to say Drew Holiday for Tobias Harris. Okay. Let's go to
hold on. What's your concern level of Drew Holiday?
Yeah, I think you had it right, about 6 or 7. He needs to turn on. Like in the second half, the third quarter against the Lakers last night, defensively, the Celtics were great. Like the Lakers couldn't score on the Celtics. We couldn't score. Drew had
That's what I'm saying,
I mean, Drew had that missed layup wide open against LeBron, and then he turned the ball over in the next possession. There were multiple 3-pointers that went in and out. Tatum and Brown missed 4 straight free throws. Like most of the buckets for the Lakers were in transition off of bad Celtics offense or a missed shot. So like that they were locked in on defense and clearly wanted to get back into that game. They just didn't have the legs for 5th game in 7 nights. Like that stuff happens. I wasn't necessarily too concerned about the game last night. But just in general, I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about individual guys. So I think you had it right, Drew, about a 6 or a 7. All right, let's go to D. White. We touched on him a little bit already. What's your level of concern, or what's a word that comes to mind when you think of Derek White and his play lately?
I'll stick with the numbers here. I'm like a 3 or a 4. It's pretty low with Derek White for right now. Part of it is I just don't know what's going on with the shooting. Like, and this is where, historically, like before the last 2 seasons, he didn't really have a track record of being a shooter, right? Of being the guy that was essentially one of the best spacers in all of the NBA, right?
Well, that
So
that was one of the things when we traded for him. They said that they thought Derek White, because I think he was like shooting low 30s at the time with the
mhm,
Spurs, and there was like reports that the Celtics believed he could become like a high 30s 3-point shooter with like the different shots that he would get playing off of Tatum and Brown. And now it seems like Derek White, for some reason, isn't necessarily playing off of Tatum and Brown quite as much with some of the 3-pointers he's shooting. It seems like he's definitely like hunting his shot a little bit more,
mhm.
which I think breeds inefficiency in general.
I mean, just real quick, so from his 4th year in the league. So before his 4th year in the league, he never shot more than 3.2 3-pointers per game. Since then, the lowest he's had is about 4.5 per game. So let's just use those last couple of years. So each of those years, he was 34.6, 31.2, 31.4, 30.6, 38.1, which was his first full year in Boston, 39.6 last year. And this year, it's now dipped down to 36.9 when he was up around the 40 plus range for quite a
Mhm.
while, so like, yeah, to your point, like it's that's the biggest concern for me is where is that number going to settle? And now he's at 8.8 3-point attempts per game, right? Like he's
Yeah.
easily at the highest amount that he's ever been at. So this is where I get a little bit unsure of how to phrase this, because I think Derek is missing he needs a little bit more diversity to his game is what I would say. I think there needs
Mhm.
to be a little bit more Derek getting in the lane for those floaters, Derek finding ways to get to not just be a 3-point shooter and take, he's taking 12.6 shots a game, 8.8 of them are coming from the 3-point line. Like I think there needs to
Yeah.
be a little bit more of a balance for him to get the percentage up and get the right shots. Like I think he's just taking this is one of the first times where I'm going to say, you think he's taking too many threes.
Yeah, taking too many threes, taking a lot of contested threes, movement threes, which is like one of the hardest shots to do. Like when you and I are shooting standstill threes, we're hitting 70% of our threes. Well, when we're just
Right.
shooting around in the gym, the moment we have to move one direction or the other, that plummets to like 50% very quickly. And maybe I'm
Yeah.
being generous saying 50% at that point. Alex says in the chat, that he's not sure it's possible to do a
Yeah.
CJ McCollum or a Jeremy Grant trade. I feel like I don't know their salaries off the top of my head, but I know they both make a good amount of money. I feel like it would
I know
have to
CJ's
be Grant.
around 30 something. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things. So I'm trying to think of who it was when I was looking up these Drew Holiday trades. There was a
And then
trade, maybe
just
it
so
was
if you're just tuning in, by the way, just real quick, the reason we're bringing up CJ McCollum and Jeremy Grant is because Reggie Miller on the broadcast last night said that was his wish list for the Celtics to get Jeremy Grant or CJ McCollum without considering any trade
anything.
restrictions or anything like that.
Right, right. Because the thing is, the Celtics can't aggregate contracts, right? And they need to, if it's going to be the same amount, basically, it either has to be the same amount as whoever's going out, or it has to be less. And you can only have one Celtic in there, because I was trying to make that. I looked at the Warriors, like, would they be interested in a Wiggins for holiday swap? And it's off by $1 million. Like exactly, I think is what
Mm.
it. No, excuse me. It was Bruce Brown to the Raptors. That was what it was off by $1 million, and there's no way to fix it. It was off by exactly $1 million, and I can't add another million to the Celtics to get it to work, and so it's just dead in the water. Right? There's just nothing that we can do there. And so that's just what I think is going to be the case with a lot of these trades, that you're going to come back with them bouncing back because you just can't make them work.
Yeah,
All
I
right, let's
think
keep
the
going with this game,
only
Greg.
just real quick though, the only
Yeah,
Jeremy Grant trade I think that works. No, you can't even do Porzingis because Grant makes more than Porzingis.
right.
You can't do Holiday, can't do Porzingis. Derek White, you could do Derek White if you wanted to. Derek White for no, you can't because no, you can't
Jeremy
do
Grant
that. You
makes
can't.
more than Derek White, right?
Yeah, so you could do Drew Holiday straight up. You could do Jason Tatum straight up. You could do Jaylen Brown straight up.
Right. Yeah, those
That's
are.
not happening.
I'm not gonna lie, Reggie. I'm gonna pass on those options.
So, Will, with your knowledge of the trade machine, Alex says CJ and Herb for JB works.
Okay. Yeah, because they can send us multiple guys. We just can't send out multiple guys.
Would you do a CJ McCollum and Herb Jones for Jaylen Brown trade?
I mean, first of all, Herb Jones is also hurt right now, so no. That's a definite no.
What does CJ make, Alex? What's his salary?
I think it's like 32 or something. He's on a descending contract. I know that, but it's like somewhere around 30. I think we'll see what Alex says. I like this comment here. Damn, y'all trading people, at least let them run it back. This is all thought process, Jamel.
Yeah, we're not trading anybody.
We're not actually trading anybody. You might have missed the first part of this. This started.
Jamel, the reason we brought this up is because Reggie Miller on the broadcast last night said that he wanted the Celtics to get either Jeremy Grant or CJ McCollum. So we're just kind of having some fun, poking fun at Reggie Miller with the trade machine to see what trades could actually work.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for Alex to look this up, Greg, let me flip this game back to you about.
Okay,
give me a word association or a number for a level of concern. Let's go Peyton Pritchard.
I'm gonna go level of concern 5. Level of concern 5.
Tell me why.
Just because I think it's just in general with the squad, too many of their shots are contested threes. Too many of their shots are above the break threes. They're shooting like Pritchard. Half of his shots seem like they're coming from 30 feet. You know what I mean? And it's just a lot to ask out of Peyton Pritchard to be efficient shooting from that long range. I love what I've seen out of Pritchard this year. I still think he's the front runner for 6th man of the year. I don't know that he's had a 5-3 game in a while. I remember we had that one stat where he had like more 5-3 games already this year than he had all of last year. And since then, I don't think he's had a 5-3 game, which is, I mean, understandable. I think 5 threes in a game is not easy. But he was just so hot at the beginning of the year. We started to raise the ceiling on him, and he was like a real game changer. Anytime he would come into the game, it was like we could rely on an extra 20 points from Peyton Pritchard, right? Without those extra 20 points from Peyton Pritchard, like we're starting to see some limitations as to the scoring punch that the Celtics actually have. Like, yeah, Tatum's awesome. He can get efficient offense. We can always throw the ball to Porzingis at the nail. Derek White, as we've already mentioned, his 3-point shot has kind of abandoned him. Peyton Pritchard's 3-point shot has gone down. Drew Holiday is non-existent on offense. Jaylen can't shoot anymore. Al Horford hasn't really been involved since Porzingis came back. Like Hauser's been struggling all year. Like when you add all of that together, it just makes for some inefficient offense. And as our guy Phil Keefe, shout out Phil, by the way, another one of his films is going to be in South by Southwest this year. He said that the Celtics are giving him hives. Even when they win, the Celtics are giving him hives.
Greg, having said everything that you just listed out, is it actually more impressive that they're 30-14 than it is worrisome? Like, can we flip it that way? Is that maybe how we should be looking at the glass half full instead of half empty?
Still winning 70% of our games, everybody.
Right. And so to your point with Peyton Pritchard, Greg, something that I've been thinking of is like these last two, like, you know, Jaylen Brown's famous quote, the energy's about to shift. Well, for Peyton Pritchard, the expectation shifted by the beginning of the year. As soon as it became the main 6th man of the year, it's like, all right, here's a guy that we know can get us 15 to 20 every night. Well, 7 out of the last 11 games, Greg, he hasn't cracked double digits. So it's like, are we being unfair, or is this new 6th man of the year, which is not as clear cut as it used to be, even aside from your boy DeAndre Hunter? Like, it's getting a little bit more crowded because Peyton's coming back down to earth here. Like, this is still the concern that I think we had last year about Peyton Pritchard and being a main rotation guy is, you know, the Lakers have a little bit of length. The Clippers have a bunch of length, even when they're without their main guys, without Kawhi Leonard and such, like those type of teams. And so we run up against the Magic, we run up against the Knicks with a bunch of long wings. Like, what's going to be the effectiveness of Peyton Pritchard? Like, is he actually, because that was a big part of that 21-5 start is, oh shit, now Peyton Pritchard's coming in, and he's a dude who's getting 16
Derek
points
White's
a game
playing like an
threes.
all-star, and Peyton Pritchard is the sixth man of the year. No wonder we were 21-5 to start.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. All right. And by the way, for those of you that are watching live, we will have a special guest. Kirk Henderson will be joining us. He actually just popped up into the waiting room. So we're going to be talking about the Mavs here in a second. Kirk, appreciate you hanging out with us today. We're going to bring you on here in just a second. Let's do one more name, Will. One more name, level of concern. Let's go to Sam Hauser. Level of concern, Sam Hauser.
I mean, he's a 7 just because if he's not a sharpshooter, what is he? What is he on this team, right?
Not someone that can guard LeBron, because LeBron was so pissed that the Celtics put Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett on him last night.
I think it was kind of like that old
Luke
Larry
Cornett
Bird
was
story. Don't you dare put a Caucasian on me, right? Like that's insulting that you put a Caucasian man on me.
He was pissed. He took Luke Cornett right to the rack and dunked on him. And I was like, yeah, LeBron's pretty upset. Like, you can't cover as old as LeBron is. You can't put Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett on him and
expect to do it again. Just can't do it. But yeah, 5 games, 7 days is what it is. Celtics fall to the Lakers. Got a day off, and coming up, we got an NBA Finals rematch, and I'm going to bring our guy Kirk Henderson on stage here so that we can get him in to join us. Joining us right now, one of the co-hosts of Pod Maverick, part of the Blue Wire Network, part of our Blue Wire family, is Kirk Henderson. Kirk, how are you doing this morning, man? You got to be doing a hell of a lot better than we are.
I'm winning as a foreign concept since Christmas. So this it was a nice little surprise. The Mavericks beat the Thunder 121-115, like the second time in 8 days and it's the third time they beat
the third time this year, right?
Third time this year they beat Oklahoma City, and the third time they beat them without Luka. So whatever's going on right there right now is really funny, because Mavericks fans don't have a ton to be happy about, and making our neighbors to the north really, really angry is rewarding.
Yeah, I actually caught the fourth quarter of that game last night. I was really impressed with the defense that the Mavs were playing in that game. They seem to have a really good game plan on SGA, getting the ball out of his hands as early as possible. And then PJ Washington is really seemingly got SGA's number, like one-on-one, stonewalled him a couple of times, made SGA, he was trying to go to his pivot bag and he couldn't get anything off against him. Can you tell me a little bit about the Mavs defense this year and how it's changed with all the new pieces?
Well, primarily it's been garbage. And that's been really something. I think the Mavericks benefited last season from, after Luka scored 73, the NBA sent out their secret memo, which Brian Windhorst, sort of broke wide open. And physicality really benefited the Mavericks. And for the first part of the season, a combination of sloppy defense paired with, I think, different refereeing really started to eat into them. Last night might have been the best defensive game plan I've seen them execute the entire year. They have not been connected for a lot of reasons. I think they have one lineup over 100 minutes for the entire year. They just the injuries are and missed games and et cetera are really starting to, after 40 plus games right now. What to make of the Mavericks is baffling. But defensively last night was fantastic. And oddly enough, what got them going was former Net and Sacramento King Kessler Edwards.
Ooh, yeah.
Had not played.
I was surprised to see him in the starting lineup. I was like, oh man, I forgot about Kessler Edwards.
And he went to college where I went to college, so I followed him forever, and he's fine. But he was outstanding last night. Just really didn't bite on any of Shea's chicanery, and that sort of bled down to everyone else. Whereas everyone was staying home. The Mavericks had a ton of turnovers in that game, 20 turnovers, but not as many live ball ones. And that's where the Thunder just crush teams, where they get these live ball turnovers to score in transition. And Dallas is able to be focused. They got lucky. The Mavericks were giving up some 3-point shooting. I think the difference between the Thunder and the Celtics over the long haul is the Celtics have actual good 3-point shooters, whereas the Thunder have sort of more empty gym 3-point shooters, where when the pressure's not on, they're able to hit some of these buckets. But when guys are when the other team is able to sort of close off Shai a little bit, make him work a little bit harder, they have a little less room to get those shots off. And so I think that's where their Achilles heel is, right? Well, other than the fact they don't seem to have anybody taller than 6'7". So it was a really fun game. The one thing I'll say about the Hospital Mavericks right now is that they're playing really entertaining basketball, more or less, because anything can happen. They can get destroyed, and Spencer Dinwiddie can be 0 for 100, or he can seal the game with a dunk. Like that was last night. Like what?
I was cheering for I'm like kind of rooting against the Thunder this year just because the SGA love is kind of annoying me with how great Tatum is.
A little gross. It's a little gross.
It's a little gross. It's a little gross. And to see Spencer Dinwiddie just do what he did against the Thunder after the Celtics couldn't score a bucket against the Thunder in the second half of the game, I was like, how is Spencer Dinwiddie doing this to this Thunder defense? Obviously, Lou Dort was not in the game because he got ejected. But I think that, seeing Spencer Dinwiddie do that definitely made me feel some type of way.
So it was fun. It was a fun way to spend a Thursday night after a really maddening loss the night before to the Timberwolves.
Yeah. And so, you talk about the Hospital Mavericks. So I forget if I mentioned this to you, Kirk. Greg and I were down here. We're actually in Austin. And so we're heading up to Dallas to go to this NBA Finals rematch on Saturday. And so I want to talk a little bit about who should we expect to see out there, because the injury list just kind of keeps growing and fluctuating. And I was listening to one of your recent podcasts. I think it might have been after the Timberwolves game, and you made a point that I thought was great. Is like, I'm really frustrated. I could nitpick a lot of things, but when Spencer Dinwiddie's playing 32 minutes, how can I really get mad at anyone at this point? Like, we have Spencer Dinwiddie, and then to your point, he's closing games out against the best team in the league a night later or 2 nights later. So, for myself and Greg, and for the fans that are getting ready for this NBA Finals rematch that is not really quite obviously a full rematch. No Lively, no Luka. I don't really know about the rest of the Mavericks that may or may not be there. What can we expect, and also other Celtics fans expect when they tune in?
Sure. So like you mentioned, Luka Doncic out with a calf strain, and that's going to be, they keep talking about bringing him back, and he's had the same injury over and over. It's the same one, like 3 times. So it's got to be concerning. They need to relax with that one. Derek Lively, his injury, if you look into it at all, it was weird. They said he sprained his ankle. Then they said he's broken his foot. Those are 2 different injuries. So whatever is going on with the Mavericks training staff, a little bit alarming. Dante Exum has missed the whole season. He took a tumble in training camp and broke his wrist badly enough to where he should have been back like weeks ago, and we're getting nothing. So he was expected to be kind of a 9, 10, 11 guy off the bench, just hasn't played much. Now things get a little goofy. Dwight Powell, Boston Celtics great.
I feel like has he been on the Mavericks for like 14 seasons at this point?
He was part of the Rondo trade, wasn't he?
He was in the Rondo trade. I kid you not. He is like number 7 all-time games played for the Mavericks.
It's crazy. No matter what happens with their roster, he's just always still there somehow. He's never leaving.
We constantly joke that he has blackmail photos of everybody. That just doesn't make any sense. So he got he got shook so bad on a drive, he hurt his hip, like he fell down. Then we have 2 guys, Klay Thompson and Jaden Hardy, who both sprained their ankles. I expect one of these guys to play because Hardy's ankle injury wasn't great, so he's a little lower on that priority, but I do expect Klay to play against the Celtics Saturday. Don't know why, just kind of a feeling. And then my favorite one, and I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, is former Pelican Najee Marshall, who is a real key to the Mavericks' early season success. He has missed 7 or 8 games with illness. Right. He got when Jimmy Butler gave everybody Miami flu, and it just slowly spread throughout the Mavericks. Najee Marshall missed so many games, and then he punched everybody's favorite Yusuf Nurkic against the Suns and missed 4 games there. So it's like he was a nice connecting piece, and injury, like illness is one of those weird things, but he missed 2 games in a row due to illness. I can't envision him missing another game due to an illness. And if he does, I'm begging Najee, if you're listening, please wash your hands. This is getting silly.
Eat some chicken noodle soup. Find a way. Drink
some water.
We all know ginger ale cures everything. So, but that's interesting. So it sounds like, at least from a Hospital Mavericks perspective, we should get a fuller roster. You know, obviously
they played
save
with
Luka,
8.
save Derek Lively.
They played with 8 NBA players last night and 3 two-way players against Boston. So I would expect in the range of 10 NBA players against the Celtics.
Okay, I mean, honestly, that could be dangerous because we've been having full rosters lately. And that's not been good for us, right? So maybe this is an evening of the matchup for it. But as we get to, you know, you mentioned like the Lively news is kind of, that's the biggest news in the last couple of days, right? That he's likely out end of season, maybe beginning of playoffs. I don't know what that timeline. It's a little murky, right? You said they completely diagnosed the wrong
1 to 3
injury.
Months. Like that's not a timeline. That's a guess. Like, what are we doing?
So do you think they replace him is my question. Or do they try to go out in the trade market and bring in somebody to give Gafford some support is my question.
It's pretty amazing because before Lively got hurt, Gafford was absolutely being shopped. He was absolutely being shopped around because he was having a heinously bad season. And then a couple of get-right games, maybe one against Portland. And then New Orleans, he played very well. So that I suppose they have to be looking for somebody because right now they're playing Maxi Kleber as sort of a backup 5, and he's for any Celtics fan unfamiliar with him, he was like just a total. He never got drafted. He was just a guy that appeared on the Mavericks because the Mavericks are contractually obligated to have someone from Würzburg, Germany on the roster. And he ended up being pretty good, but he's older now. He can't play the minutes. So they're a little small. I don't expect them to go get someone just because they don't have that many trade assets. Because right now the Mavericks, with what they have to use, they create a problem by solving one with anything that they send out. All the guys that I mentioned that they were injured, it's not like you're getting a big man for like Jaden Hardy's $4 million contract. Like, it's not a thing. So I could be wrong in this regard, but I think they will just probably try to slog it through. I have a sneaky feeling they expect Luka to come back just before the All-Star game, and his size will help with some of their like rebounding. Just they've been awful at rebounding. But there's other things could happen. I just don't see it right now. But also, I'm very bad at trades.
Okay. So I don't know if this is a right time to bring this up. Then I was going to ask you, with Gafford, if he's being shopped, what type of big man do you feel like the team needs?
Ooh, this is a good question. Let me see here. My boss is texting me.
Right. We're the same way here. We Greg and I do our entire show based around our other job schedules.
That's right. Sorry about that. Terrible audio. The thing, I heard someone mention Vujicic like a more stretch big, but his contract is just enormous.
Yeah.
That's the name I was going to throw out there.
But he would probably have to be part of like a multi-team trade because they'd have to shed some salary because his contract's kind of big.
Yeah, well, the Celtics are kind of in a similar position where we're not really able to make any moves just based on, like you said, the Jaden Hardy. That's our Jaden Springer, where it's like, cool, we have a $4 million Jaden Springer contract. What is that actually getting us? There's not really a ton of actual moves to make unless you go do something crazy. And the way that this CBA is set up, and so many teams in the first apron or the second apron are approaching the tax and so on and so forth, it is really, really hard to find ways to make a lot of these trades work because either one team can aggregate players and another team can, or vice versa. And it's honestly, it's really messy and not great for trade machine fodder on podcasts like ours.
I mean, you can get there. Just I don't know what the cap situations of both teams are. Just like super quick glance, you can get there with Gafford and Kleber for Vucevic.
Which makes 20. That's a good example of what I mean, where you solve one problem in that you bring in somebody new because you need some, but then you give up the two bodies that are currently holding down the fort. So
yeah.
And then also you got to figure out the Bulls are going to want some draft comp. Like, they're not going to be super stoked about, Kleber and Gafford with where they're at. Like, they're going to want some, I don't know how much draft compensation you think Vucevic is worth to then make that 2-for-1 swap as well.
And you never know. Year to year, the value of these guys on the Bulls just changes. Everybody on the Bulls, value.
That's why the Bulls never trade them. That's why the Bulls always hold on to them, because it keeps fluctuating and they always miss the wrong time.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean they could want Gafford though. He's 26. Vucevic is in his 30s, so like.
But they already had him. Is your and I know it's a different organization. I think it's a different front office. But that would, and Gafford, because Gafford is due for a new contract at the end of next season. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be one of these guys that I sort of think gets a little bit of a pinch, because the things that he's excellent at, when he has a great game, he looks amazing. And then when he has a bad game, like, for example, if Porzingis is playing, Porzingis is going to torch him, because he's just a little bit undersized for a starting center. You look at him on your television, you're like, oh, it's a pretty big guy. And then you see him playing against, like, let's just say, and, obviously MVP guy and Nikola Jokic, but Jokic is he's so much heavier and 2 inches taller. And, over a series, let's say a 6-7 game series, he's just the kind of guy that gets exploited. I think that if he's playing starter level minutes, he's a extremely high level backup big.
Kirk, you mentioned playoff series, and I want to ask you about the Mavericks' outlook. And of course, a lot of these injury concerns are going to cloud whatever you think you're trying to forecast for them. But right now, you guys are in 7th place. You're 24-21. 5 through 9 in the West is separated by 2 games, so it's real tight. One good week, one bad week, and that can shift. So, how do you try to assess what is, this team's coming off an NBA Finals run? How do you assess where this team stacks up in the West and what their potential is just for this season going forward?
Well, I made the mistake just before the Christmas Day game. Mavericks were 20-10, and I'm sitting here looking at how they're playing. I'm saying, you know what? This is fine. This is ideal. This is the start that we had wanted. We wanted the Mavericks to actually have a decent start and not play like roughly just under 500 basketball in December, January, February, which is what they've done a lot of the time since Jason Kidd's been involved. Then Luka gets hurt. So I think if you have a mostly healthy roster, or at least your 2 stars are healthy, Luka and Kyrie, reasonably healthy heading into the playoffs, I think they're firmly in number 2. They can beat every one of these teams in the Western Conference. I have 0 issues. The Thunder, the fact that they've beaten the Thunder ultimately is kind of meaningless, because the Thunder have been without Chet and been without Isaiah Hartenstein. So those games
was that the case for the other games that you guys beat them as well? I know they haven't overlapped in their time.
Hart's missed 2. And then Chet's obviously missed all of them. And so if you get one or both of those guys back, it changes the math a little bit. Same with having Luka back. But there's not really a team in the Western Conference that legitimately concerns me because of how the Mavericks are able to play. And they can play fast, they can play slow. The Rockets are a fun one. And probably Denver too, for obvious reasons related to Jokic. The Rockets are just the kind of team that would give Luka and Kyrie hell, because they just have so many defenders, and the Mavericks really are a heavy primary ball handling team. But what's been interesting about this injury run is it's forced certain guys, PJ Washington in particular, to assume a greater role in the offense, which you have to hope would pay off in a higher pressure situation down the road. So, yeah.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. I mean, I think when I look at the West, it's, because of the way the Mavericks have played the Thunder are the one team I look at that I feel like have separated themselves. And that seems to be a team that you guys have no fear of. Beat them last year, beat them 3 times. Like you said, the equation changes when they have big men in there, but beyond the Thunder, 2 through 10, 11, like none of those teams have really separated themselves. Of course, you may lean, like you said, Jokic is Jokic, so he kind of maybe elevates the Nuggets. But other than that, there's every single team in there that it's like, why would I be afraid of this team, right? And it's kind of a crapshoot outside of that. And so for the Mavericks, it's really just a matter of getting healthy and ideally maybe trying to keep yourself out of the play and just to have to play those extra games and set yourself up with maybe a little bit better of a path. But it feels like the Mavericks still are, to your point, there's no reason they shouldn't be the 2nd or 3rd team that you're really looking at beyond the Thunder to kind of make a run. And then that kind of leads to the point that I want to ask you about here is, from a Celtics perspective, this happened to us a couple of years ago, make the finals for the first time. I still think we were the more talented team than the Warriors, but the Warriors were the more experienced team. They punched us in the face. We didn't really know how to respond to it at that point. Game 4 doesn't go our way. series goes to the Warriors. We've heard Jalen talk about it with Draymond, where he was like, we'll be ready next time, but we weren't ready that time. That was kind of the big difference. I look at the Mavericks and the Celtics matchup last year, and Celtics had that extra experience, right? Like the Mavericks, 2 years before, same year we went to the finals, they make that Western Conference Finals run with Jalen Brunson and Luka, but still hadn't really got over that hump. So it was their first time in the NBA Finals. So I'm curious, what lessons do you think the Mavs can learn from that loss in the NBA Finals last season that can help them eventually get over the hump?
Man, the Celtics so thoroughly broke what the Mavericks did well that the lessons learned were like just sort of started and ended with that they weren't talented enough. And that's kind of a boring answer. But Derrick Jones Jr., for example, had been such a vital part of the Mavericks playoff success. And do you remember Derrick Jones mattering a single game or a single moment in the Celtics series? He was defensively, I don't want to say useless, but he felt useless because the Celtics were so long that he was nullified. And Jason Tate, I think he spent a fair amount of time on Tatum, and with Luka being just really pretty terrible on ball, he was the Mavericks were constantly in rotation. So it was just a real challenge there that they had to get, I think what's like the phrase in football, more multiple, which is where like a guy like Najee Marshall comes in. Like they traded around a lot of their talent. They did need more shooting for sure. I'm pretty amused by the concept that Klay Thompson is the answer, not because he's bad. Clay's obviously outstanding, but Clay's also 35. So
Brett and Grimes too, right?
Yeah, and Grimes has been a whole lot of fun. There's just they're a different looking team, and they played very well together in the limited minutes that they did get. But because Jason Kidd is a butthead, it took him until like 15. I mean, they wouldn't start Derek Lively. It's like, what are we doing? Lively's the center of the future. Stop playing like he up until he was. It might have changed now, but for the first 30 games, him and Gafford were playing the same number of minutes. Like, don't do that. Like, play the guy who's better more. It's a real simple concept in NBA. Right. Like, it's why the Nuggets are so good in the regular season. So,
I mean, in the finals last year, anytime Gafford was on the court over Lively, we were cheering. Derek Lively was a problem for the Celtics, especially because you mentioned Gafford being a little undersized. Tatum being able to guard Gafford well in the playoffs was a real problem for you guys, right? I think Derrick Jones Jr., I don't know if you saw, he got his revenge game on the Celtics
a couple nights
ago. He had 29 points again.
He's been really good, and it's very annoying. Like, I'm glad he's doing well because he's earning that contract. But he was he's like an 11-year NBA vet, and that's the biggest deal he's ever signed. And it's pretty wild because he wasn't a great shooter, but I suppose playing with Harden is similar to playing with Luka, where you're getting these good looks, and all you got to do is do your, you have two decisions when you get the ball in the Clippers offense when you're a guy like him. And so it's the Mavericks now just have more, like they're a little less athletic. Just because like Derrick Jones Jr. is kind of a top tier NBA athlete, but I think they're a little more well-rounded. The shooting is at least there. So
I like the addition of Marshall. I've always been a big Marshall guy. I thought bringing in Klay was worth a chance because they definitely needed that shooting, and a couple of moments here and there, you hit a big corner three and that could swing a series. Grimes, I think, is an upgrade. I think Spencer Dinwiddie can at least deck the ball and close out the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like Spencer Dinwiddie can do that stuff. So looking at your offseason, I thought on paper, it made a lot of sense as to why they're doing it. Obviously, I still think it comes down to Luka just being in better shape and being able to play some semblance of NBA defense, because the Celtics were ecstatic anytime they could get Luka in a switch, and they just hunted him. And Jaylen Brown, who hasn't played well really at all this year, just exposed him and always cooks Luka. The moment he sees Luka in front of him, he's just licking his chops. But Kirk, I have one more trade for you.
Sure.
Can I tempt you with a little Sir Robert Williams III from the Portland Trailblazers for Maxi Kleber and Olivier Maxence Prosper and a pick? You have 1 million picks to give away. Would you do that trade?
Is it a second round pick or a first round pick?
Who cares? Just a pick.
Let's say it's either 1 first round pick that you can protect in whatever way, or 2 second round picks.
It's mainly just because that's a limiting trade. I would have to strongly consider. I really have liked Robert Williams. Obviously, you got the injury concerns, but I think with any big man that plays above the rim, at a certain point, they have injury concerns. He would definitely get minutes. I'll tell you that much. I've always liked him as a player, going back to pre-draft stuff. So he would be someone that I would have to strongly consider, but I think they would need to know for sure how long Derek Lively was out, because they would need minutes from him. He could. They would be so small. Olivier Maxence-Prosper is an odd duck he's a second-year guy. He played really well last night. Probably one of the best games I've ever seen him play. But he's a guy that somebody once described him as playing at 1.75 speed, just like a podcast going too fast. So he's not really on the Mavs timeline, I don't think, but I could be wrong. So he's
got a little like him and Koulibaly kind of remind me of each other.
Big guys, really, and big wings. Just you can't take your eye off a big wing, whether they can shoot or not. They keep getting chances. So he's an interesting piece. His contract's a little. So I'd have to consider it. I wouldn't shoot it down out of the sky. How's that?
I like it. Yeah, I want to see Rob Williams play meaningful basketball, because with his injury history, I feel like he's gonna play 3 more years in the NBA, and then we're never gonna.
And if he's healthy right now, let's please get him somewhere that he can do something. And we talked about. I asked you about replacing Lively. At least in the interim, that's a pretty good replacement, and then gives you an extra body to kind of rotate in with Gafford and Lively when all three are available. So I think that's an interesting one here. Kirk, we'll end on this one here. Number one, any chance you're going to be at the game on Saturday by any chance? Or
4:30 start time. My wife
weird start time.
Limited patience for me doing this, and with 2 small children, a day game is that would just get me laser eyes. Why are you even asking me? So
fair enough. We're only getting to go because it's my makeshift bachelor party. So that's I've made everyone just go to a Celtics game. Is essentially I was I don't want to do anything.
I will say this. I will say this: the Mavericks, I've been to probably 5 NBA arenas. The Mavericks do a very good job for in-game ops. They just have a lot of fun with it. It's if they do, and granted, the NBA I think has generally gotten better at this, but it should be a great time. I think you're going to enjoy yourself.
We were at game 4, Kirk.
Oh, that's fun.
So it wasn't a great time.
Not as much for us.
Oh, that was the one. Yeah, okay, because game 3 was the game where that was where
game 3 would have been a lot more fun than game 4. So I was gonna say, I'm sure the Mavericks do a great job. I was a little too depressed to notice last game 4, having just spent absurd amounts of money to sit 2 rows from the top in a game where the Celtics then get.
The Celtics didn't show up. They just didn't play.
It wasn't even a moment for hope.
Dude, it was the most pathetic effort I'd ever seen live. And obviously the Mavs backs against the wall had to play well. Weird. But it was just they didn't show up.
Yeah. No. Just waited for that game, for that series to go back to Boston. But what I'll get you out of here on, Kirk, is give us how do you think the Mavericks are going to approach this game against the Celtics? How do you think they're going to try to attack the Celtics to get a win here?
I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie's going to shoot the ball a lot. That's kind of the opening thing. Kyrie Irving, he does not play well against the Celtics just generally. But I think that's both a psychological and a length-based thing. That said, he has found so I hope he comes ready to sort of shoot 3-pointers and just attack. But other than that, the Mavericks just have to hope the Celtics are still in this weird funk. Because if this were a 40-minute basketball game, like a FIBA game, I'd feel better about the Dallas chances. But a 48-minute game, it's just long enough for things to go wrong. Is sort of my take. So I don't want to be down on my guys, but this is not great. They're hurt and they can pull one out of a hat. I just don't think it two times in 3 days, and it'll be the 4th game or I'm sorry, 3 games in 4 nights for this group. So it's just a lot of basketball for kind of a down and out team. So we'll see. It could be fun. I at least expect it to be entertaining, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, based on everything you're saying, and Celtics just lost to the Lakers last night, 5th game in 7 days, and now it's just 1 day off. So now it's really just 6 games in 8 days or 9 days, however you want to extend that out. I'm expecting some sloppy basketball on Saturday when we go. So to your point, Kirk, I think at the very least, we're going to get an entertaining game. But Kirk, really appreciate you jumping on here, man, to chop it up with us here. NBA Finals rematch on Saturday. Kirk is the co-host of Pod Maverick, part of the Blue Wire podcast family with us. Kirk, anything else that you would tell people to find you? I know at Kirk Serious Face, if you guys are looking for some more coverage over on X, but anything else that you want to drop here for people that maybe looking for some Mavericks knowledge?
I'm editor of MavsMoneyball.com, so just over there. I haven't written anything worth a damn in years, but I or other people do. So it's if you're interested on reading like about the Thunder game, we put up like 3 or 4 things on it that I'm pretty proud of. So yeah, this has been fun. Thanks for having me, guys.
For sure.
All
Kirk,
right.
One dinner recommendation for us while we're in Dallas.
Ooh, good question.
Dinner. Oh man.
Or breakfast.
There's so
just
many
the rest food in general. It can be any type of food.
Oh my God, you caught me off guard. I'm gonna have to think about this and shoot you a message. I'm sorry. All right. No, you guys have fun. Have a good day.
All right, guys. Appreciate everybody tuning in here. This has been another edition of Friday Coffee and C's. Greg and I heading up to Dallas for the weekend. We will have a Rockets and Celtics preview ready to rock for you guys Sunday, Monday. So we got you covered. And then next time Greg and I hop back on the mic, we'll give you a recap of our trip to Dallas. So everybody, be safe. Enjoy your weekend. Greg, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I feel like I had something that I wanted to talk about because I thought we were going to do Pass the Rock. Oh, yeah. One thing. What would you say the percentage is of you putting your shirt on correctly? Like, it's in my mind, it's like 50-50. It's either going to be on the right way or it's going to be on backwards. I feel like for me, my shirt goes on backwards like 90% of the time. You know what I mean? Like I wear a lot of t-shirts where there's not a lot.
I'm going to be honest. I don't know what you mean. Wait. You're saying... You explain this to me.
So like you putting on a t-shirt to start the day.
Yeah, there's only a front and a back, so I get that. But
yeah,
like, what do you mean? You consistently put it on the wrong way? What do you mean?
Like most of the time when I put on a t-shirt, like to start the day, I'll just wear like a plain black t-shirt, right? I feel like 90% of the time I put it on and I'm like, damn, I put it on backwards again.
I don't know. It feels pretty easy. I mean, listen.
Hold on, let's bring Alex on here. Let's bring Alex on here real quick. Alex, we're gonna bring you on here real quick. You don't need a mic or anything. I just need to get your opinion. And you're muted, so you can unmute yourself. You're shaking your head. Why are you shaking your head?
It's just not a problem that happens for me. I guess.
I don't know. Alex, you know what? You've just earned your keep by being a second voice of reason on this. This is what an insane last take to have before we sign off. Hey, you know how hard it is to put your shirt on as a 35-year-old? That's basically what your statement just was.
Well, and even today, Danielle makes fun of me all the time for it because like every single time I put a shirt on, and it's not just a t-shirt. I'm gonna be real with you guys. Like if it goes over my head, it's inevitably ending up backwards. Like today, she has one of those like blanket hoodies that I got her for Christmas, and I put that on backwards today. It's like, what the hell? Like there's a hood on it.
How do you put it on backwards?
Dude, you're telling me? I couldn't figure it out. And she was like, I get it with a t-shirt. Like I get it. Like you put it on consistently the wrong way and it's ridiculous. But I get it.
Consistency is the trouble.
With the hood,
it can happen, but
with a hood, that there might actually be a significant learning disability going on here.
Yeah, this sounds like
that's all I got. Problem, dog. That's all I got.
Yeah, that sounds like a you problem, dog. I don't. You've left me stunned once again. I think morning screeches and putting on your shirt wrong. I don't know what to tell you, man. I think that's a you thing.
Yeah, might be.
They seem like niche problems that not a lot of people have.
Okay.
All right, Alex, I appreciate you jumping on here, making sure that it's 2 against 1 here going forward.
Get out of here,
the fight in the fight for normalcy on this podcast. I appreciate my brethren in arms, Alex Gonzalez. Shout out to you. Appreciate Alex, the video intern, hopping on with us here. Greg, this does it, man. Time to pack the bags. Let's head to Dallas, and we'll report back here later in the week. Everybody, take care. Have a good one. Catch y'all later. Deuces.